And welcome back to the Uncool show. I am Dylan,
I'm Nathan.
and we are on episode 22 today, which today is a kind of a special episode for more than one reason. So this is going to be an extended intro, but Nathan and I are one subscriber away from 1,000 at the time that we film this. We're at 999. So just a quick little thank you to all you guys who've supported. Quick thank you to Nathan for jumping in. Quick thank you to Randy for helping me get this started years ago. From talking about the Packers and the Bucks and talking about mental health and all that stuff, couldn't have done it without little Randy. And I love you, buddy. And you're still a big part of part of this channel and a part of my life. And Nathan and I can't wait to see you. So we'll do down the line we'll have a reunion.
A three-person pod.
We'll do a reunion episode with Randy. Maybe about movies, maybe about the Bucks, maybe about
it all. It should just
about
be
anything.
It should be all hands on deck.
Yeah.
About everything.
But love you, Randy. Thank you for being who you are, buddy. I'm really proud of you and really happy for you. So just keep up the good work. And really happy for this guy too. I love my brother. I'm so happy to be closer in proximity to all my family. It's been a pretty big blessing. And just thank you to everybody who's, subscribed, even if you haven't watched anything, It's always good to connect and see that number go up. We love it. So thank you guys, and thank you for being part of the journey. And whoever wants to be number 1,000, I'll drive to your house and I'll give you a big wet kiss. I promise you. Right on the lips. But today, for the actual show, Nathan and I are going to talk about Tommy Boy, which to me, I've seen this movie. I've probably seen Tommy Boy more than any movie in my life. I have probably seen Tommy Boy well over 100 times. Maybe not well over 100, but closing in on it. I've seen this movie from the time I was 4 years old and watched it multiple times a year since then. So I probably am over 100 personally.
I'm at least over like 50, I think.
Being 32. So 28 years of Tommy Boy for me. That's crazy. But yeah, I not the best comedy that's ever been made, but this is my favorite comedy. I love Tommy Boy. It's a big warm hug for me, and every time I watch it, it instantly flips my mood around if I'm in a bad mood. I love Tommy Boy. I love Chris Farley. Everybody who knows me has heard me repeat myself incessantly about this guy. I love Chris, always will. But you talk a little bit about your relationship with Tommy Boy, which is very similar to mine.
It's very similar to
yours.
Grew
up in the same house watching it,
I mean, I grew up in a family that loved Chris Farley and loved his comedy, loved his movies, loved his SNL skits. So it's becoming, watching this movie over the years, just more and more part of our vocabulary, just talking to each other. And
I would say that
our lingo.
You, me, our Uncle Gus.
Now Ryan.
And Ryan, I would say we know pretty much 99% of the beats of this film. And Gus, I mean, I know Gus grew tired of this film because of how much we saw it as kids. By the time he was in his 20s, dude, I've seen that movie. I get it. We've all seen this movie a lot. I think we've seen it to the point where even little background cues and little musical cues and
I know every beat to this movie.
Every beat is completely up there. And yeah, we do use this a lot in referential humor. We quote the lines a lot,
Absolutely.
It's part of our family lexicon. It's also just part of Midwest lexicon.
It's a huge Midwest movie, and Chris Farley's a huge Midwest figure.
Yep.
Who was baked into the Midwest and found himself launched into stardom, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to not only his talent and also just his family, and that's so cool that they brought up all those kids. And I mean, his dad was a very successful businessman, and they were based in the Madison area.
Yep.
Right.
Selling
pianos.
They have a piano store now, I believe, but his dad was in gravel, sold gravel for roads. Kind of instead of Tommy Boy, if you don't know Tommy Boy, Tommy is kind of he spent 7 years at college partying instead of really getting to work, which I can relate to. And he goes home and he's given a job by his dad, played by Brian Dennehy, who is pretty much a real life parallel to the real Tom Farley Sr. just this larger than life character who liked to booze, liked to bring his clients out to restaurants and sell them on his product, which was asphalt. And that's kind of where a lot of the heart of this movie stems from. In a weird way, Tommy Boy is super autobiographical.
Absolutely. And
Um,
I remember reading this in the Chris Farley show book that, yeah, I mean, the Dennehy character and Tommy, you know, played by Chris, like, you see a lot of parallels just in it's mirroring real life in terms of wanting to please his dad and feeling like he has to please his dad and work for his dad, or live up to the promise that his dad had in his mind.
yep.
And and you can see this in they don't really dive too deep, because this is a 90-minute 90s comedy with Farley and Spade, but Chris or Tommy, it's hard to separate the two, honestly,
Yeah.
because they're so similar.
Yeah.
um Tommy really wants to live up to Tom Sr. and be the successor to his dad.
You know, spoiler alert, this movie really hinges upon Tommy's father passing away. That's kind of the heart of the film. The first 20 minutes, you're getting to know people, you're getting to know the situation. You get to see the factory and the workers in the factory. You get the dynamics between Tommy and Richard, played by David Spade, and then you get the dynamics between Tommy and his dad. And then the movie takes a really quick turn, and Tom has a heart attack at his wedding, and
That's been that's been Tommy's life.
Yeah.
Like wanting to please his dad, wanting to work for him, wanting to get out of the college life, and
go back
eventually
home.
going back to Ohio to work for him, and like that, it's gone. And he's
Yep.
kind of there's this beautiful sequence when he and Richard, David Spade's character, are still at the funeral after everyone's left, and
Amazing Grace is playing on the bagpipes.
yeah, and which is a great needle drop for that moment, and it's such beautiful scenery. And then Tom wanders back to Callahan Auto and just sits there and takes it in
Yeah.
and think, and
Yep.
is someone who looks like he doesn't know where he's going to be going.
Yep.
His dad was his life, basically.
Yeah.
And they go into this like a tiny bit with the Dennehy character that Tommy's mom passed away, likely when Tommy was young, and
Yep.
and so they had each other, and they only had each other, and it's a beautiful but also sad thing. And when you lose someone like that, obviously that's going to have massive effects on you.
Yep. And this, like you said, this is a 90-minute 90s comedy, so it doesn't like spend a lot of time focusing on Tommy's sadness, but it has that scene that you referred to as the scene with Michelle, his love interest in the movie, in the dinghy, where he gets vulnerable about his dad. And I think, that's kind of part of the lasting appeal of Tommy Boy is that heart, that little 15-minute section.
Yes.
The movie, I think it still works without that, but it doesn't work nearly as well. That being said, we're getting a little too far into the movie. I get just quickly, because a lot of people aren't really going to know Chris Farley the way that we know him. So just not a history lesson, so to speak, because then I know Nathan hinted at it, but Chris was a Madison-born comedian, went to Marquette, went to UW-Madison. Was a larger-than-life personality pretty much everywhere he went. Went down to the Second City in Chicago, the world-renowned theater improv company started by Del Close. Pretty much everybody who's ever went through SNL or made a living in comedy has been at Second City at one point. If you're ever interested, just go to their Wikipedia page, and decades and generations of talent have come through there.
And a lot from Chicago itself.
A lot from
Chicago.
Yep. Chris went there, like you said, became kind of a sensation in that theater scene. And then somebody from SNL came out to see him. I don't know if it was Lorne or a Lorne Underly.
Yeah.
But saw him and immediately was like, he's our new hire. And he became, like you said, kind of an overnight sensation very quickly. Probably a little too quickly
for
who Chris was and the things he struggled with. But Farley became SNL's biggest star, even among their biggest stars at the time. He led the new troupe, him and Sandler and people like Spade and Chris Rock, and they became known as the bad boys of SNL. For me, that'll always be my favorite era of SNL. That
Hmm.
leading into like the Tina Fey, Will Ferrell, Amy Poehler era,
Yep.
the late '90s to early
I completely
2000s.
agree.
Those two casts are
Yeah.
just the best. I
Hmm.
think you get the best sensibilities of like the really daring, weird stuff of the '90s, and then the weird character stuff that people like Will
Hmm.
Ferrell brought into the aughts. But SNL is still a very real cultural touchstone, and Farley was a big part of that. And you know, had the how many different sketches that were huge on that show.
Hmm. That are still seen today and are gifs, are memes,
Yep.
are widely viewed on YouTube. Like if you look at those
Yeah, they're
skits,
still
they're
huge.
huge.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny talking like this, just you and me, because we could wax poetic about Chris for hours and hours
Yeah.
and hours, and we have.
Yep.
Um, but to think just broadly, you know, we're two Midwestern kids who grew up in a house of Farley,
Yep.
and a lot of our family who isn't a fan of Farley, if you at least have a little bit of knowledge about him. But
Yeah.
like he was big everywhere. Like
Yeah.
he like
He
you
was a
put it
star.
very well. He is a sensation, like one of the biggest shining shooting stars SNL's ever had.
Yep. It. I mean, the Chippendale sketch. Matt Foley, of course, is his most famous. You know, the Van Down by the River sketch is American Lexicon. You know, the Chris Farley show
Mhm.
sketches, the Schiller Vision hidden, you know, decaf coffee
It's a big one.
commercial, Schmidt's Gay
Yep.
beer, that fake ad with Sandler
The
is really fun.
the
The
Hurley boy.
Hurley Boys, uh, the Zagat's
Oh,
menu
which is
reading with him and
so
Sandler.
good.
A lot of good stuff that, you know, again, there was so much talent in that era
Hmm.
of SNL. And this was in a time where comedies were a little cheaper to make, a lot cheaper to
Yeah.
make. And Nathan and I were talking about it when we watched the movie. Lorne Michaels allegedly just was walking by Chris's and David Spade's, who we'll talk about David too. We're very focused on Chris, but David will get his shine too. But apparently Lorne was just walking by their office and David was making fun of Chris and Chris was just laughing his butt off and having fun. And he's like, this is a good dynamic. We can make a movie of this. Well, we'll greenlight this tomorrow. And they did. And they kind of like in between working on SNL, they would ship the boys up to Canada and they were just making a movie with half of a script
Hmm.
and just winging it every day, which is something that I know a lot of people don't know. Nathan and I are deep in the weeds in this, so we know. But I think it's important to say that
It is.
because this movie shouldn't work at all. It
No,
shouldn't
it
have
really shouldn't
it
work.
shouldn't have come together at all with half of a script and 15 different writers and 15 different I mean it.
I believe a second time director, or like a second or third, like this is his third movie, Peter Siegel. And he talks about how he's kind of in over his head, and he, like you said, the script issues were massive.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch the movie, you do get a sense of like, okay, a lot of this does seem either like improvised or
Loose.
gags that were thought of on the day, and like, okay, let's just do this. Let's just try it.
Yep.
Let's see if it works.
Yep.
And not to say that there isn't a central story baked into the narrative that is both relatable and fun and a little sad. But there is a lot of lightness to this movie, and I think you find that in a lot of '90s comedies. And
Yeah.
eventually, when you head into the Will Ferrell Apatow world, where it's almost too improvised, and you can really see it. This movie has a structure, but a lot
Very
of the times
loose.
it just seems like Chris and David were told to just play around.
Yep.
And David, you're going to be the mean, biting, sarcastic one making fun of Chris, and Chris, you're going to be the one annoying the hell out of David.
Which I don't think these two had to do too much.
Uh-uh.
Again, I think both of these guys are really good in this movie. I know critics were tough on Chris when he was alive. Roger Ebert famously hated Chris and was never even remotely kind in his viewings of anything Chris made. But I think there's some moments where Chris is really good in this movie, not just in comedy, both physical and like intellectual, but there's some moments of like real emotionality here, and you know, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind that as beloved as he was in for like the everyday man,
Yes.
critics never were able to like buy into the fact that like this isn't a serious movie, just have fun with it, you know?
And people also did not buy into the Bad Boys era.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they were fired.
Fired Sandler and Chris.
That's a big reason. I don't think the TV critics got them. I think the fans, and like you said, like,
ahead of their time a little bit.
they are a little ahead of their time, and I think but like Sandler and Farley and people like Will Ferrell, Eddie Murphy, pluck them. I mean, put them in any era, and they're superstars.
Yep.
And Chris was a superstar, even bigger than someone like Adam Sandler, who eventually turned into a mega comedy star and still is today.
Oh yeah, but back then that wasn't
the case. Chris
wasn't the case.
was probably the most sought after star in that young group.
Yep.
And it is unfortunate, you mentioned the Roger Ebert thing. Like, I've listened to pods and seen people write about this. Like, why was Roger Ebert so hard on him? Like, he's so wrong about Chris.
Yeah.
Like,
it's okay not to like him.
It's okay. It's completely okay. And comedy is so subjective. So I completely understand
it's like
that.
he was offended by Chris.
Like,
he was like personally.
The one thing I think that people probably got mad at Chris for trying to act.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do watch Tommy Boy and Black Sheep, because there are some little emotional moments in Black Sheep, you do see Chris trying. Like, he is trying to be emotional. And that's not to say that it's not effective. I just think that critics were like, this big comedy star think he can act and do some things. And maybe they were a little, I mean, Chris is easy to put down. He was easy to put down in life, unfortunately.
Yep.
And he had his own demons, and he was very self-conscious and self-aware of how he came across to people.
Yeah.
And it's sad that most, if not all, of his movies were panned.
Yeah.
They were not received well. And some of them have major flaws, to be fair.
Oh, for sure.
But they're all so enjoyable, and you cannot deny that Chris was supremely talented for his generation.
And there's a reason why Tommy Boy, more so than Black Sheep, another Farley Fair, or Beverly Hills Ninja, didn't last. Tommy Boy lasts.
Mm-hmm.
It's by far the best project that Chris was a part of. I think it's the best project that David Spade has been a part of.
Mm-hmm.
30 years later. Unfortunately, Chris was so in demand that he was like shoehorned into Black Sheep. He wanted to be in The Cable Guy. He wanted to be in that movie with Vince Vaughn that never got made, The Gelfin.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to make the Fatty Arbuckle biopic. But, bad representation and bad choices and signing bad contracts for movies that you didn't really want to make. And again, like we touched on, Chris was really wanted people to love him. And if you didn't love his movie, he had a really hard time. The last time he relapsed was after Beverly Hills Ninja. He went to the premiere of that, realized it was a really bad movie, and like cried for hours in his brother's arms, and then left his brother and scored heroin. It's just one of those souls that was a little too sensitive for how famous he was. I think if he was a lower level comedian, you wouldn't have run into the issues, but he was so famous and so sought after and
so well liked too.
Liked by
personally,
by
everybody loved
and
Chris.
everybody wanted to party with him, including really bad people. And not to make the whole thing about the negative parts of Chris, but Nathan and I and Gus and I and Ryan and I and a lot of people in our family have talked about what could have happened. And unfortunately, what did happen was that Chris died of a really bad drug overdose, and he died alone. On a linoleum floor after a prostitute left him. It's not a situation where you want to see any human being end up, let alone someone who's trying to make people laugh and smile.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same kind of pain you see in Robin Williams. Not the same level of talent or the same type of talent, but the same level of like, I just want to do a good job and make people happy, but I can't make myself happy no matter what I do. And that's just it's a tragic.
It's the sad clown archetype.
Yeah, the sad clown that. You ever see the song that he sang on Conan about being overweight and a sad clown and like it's super vulnerable and everybody's just laughing at him?
Yeah,
it's just like that was his life. All the fame I don't think made him very happy or very functional. But we'll get back to Tommy Boy. We'll get back off.
We could
Farley.
literally talk about Farley for hours.
Yeah,
we really could.
I could do a series on Chris, on every movie, on every sketch. I've read everything. It's obscene.
So going into this, we have almost probably too much information about Chris to be objective in talking about Tommy Boy and talking about the man, the myth himself. But yeah, going back to Tommy.
But we'll go back to Tommy Boy.
Mhm.
Big Tom dies, like what we talked about. That is the crux of the movie, and it is then decided that Tommy and Richard are gonna go on Tom Senior's old
Like
business trip, a sales trip,
Yeah,
where he's
sales trip.
driving all around the Midwest to different auto manufacturers and shops and trying to sell brake pads. And not to be too much, but hilarity ensues. There's not a whole lot of plot from that point.
No.
What you're seeing is not so much plot, but character development. We talked about this. You see Tommy go from the bumbling idiot to the confident salesman, and you see Richard go from like the confident jerk to like the sensitive
He's like supports Tommy. Like,
supporter.
yeah, he's like he's like kind of in service of Tommy by the end.
Yeah.
And he's a true friend by the end.
Yeah.
Um,
They go through their issues.
because we were talking about this when watching the movie. I mean, when Tommy walks in, I mean, he's so lovable and joyful, and just he seems happy to be alive, the Tommy character.
Yep.
But then Richard's like, this is the ultimate Nepo baby.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the business world, like this is death for someone like me. Like
Yep.
the owner's son coming in here and taking a job that I'm more equipped for and
has been
deserve.
working for years.
Yeah. And so there's that built-in resentment between those two characters, which makes up about a good, like it's half the movie, that dynamic.
Yep.
And Richard being like, like your dad, like I saw him as my own father figure. And like, I really worked hard, and like I worked hard to be where I'm at.
I worked way harder than you
and
did.
you didn't, and you were just handed this job. And I mean, who wouldn't feel a little bit of resentment, honestly?
Oh, for sure.
And especially in like that small town America where
everybody knows each other.
Exactly. And Richard has lived in the literal shadow of Tommy his whole life.
Yep.
But he's also, Richard does it to himself. He's not friendly. He's so sarcastic and mean and just
biting, very like keep everybody away all the time.
At a distance, if it's a business relationship, we can talk. If not,
Yep.
But yeah,
I think the dynamic between those two, well, one like we hinted at was lifted from real life, but really works.
It does.
The sarcastic straight man and the lovable goof. It's been done a million times, but those two definitely had their own spin on it, and their relationship was that very biting and very backhanded at times, but always, underscored by real love and care for each other. And to this day, David and all those guys still talk about Chris, and they talk about him like he's, the only thing in life that they missed out on.
Yeah.
Sandler and Spade really, and people like Tom Arnold and random people that were part of his life.
Like it's always funny hearing like a Chris story from the most like random person. Like Chris interacted with Ryan Reynolds when they made Dirty Work. Like you look at like all the people that Chris was with or around, they all have their stories. They all have some crazy stories.
Yeah, there's some wild stories of Chris when he was partying for sure.
Yeah, or in the SNL offices, and you're just like, man, this guy was so full of life.
Yeah.
And it's probably hard for, obviously it is hard for people that were around him, really close to him when he was amidst all that success, to fully talk about him and engage about him. But someone like David, I mean, David is like really tied to Chris because both of their success came with each other at SNL, and obviously the two movies they made.
Yep.
And I'm sure part of David, not to like get into personal things or cast whatever on David Spade, but like this dynamic where you're kind of living in the shadow of someone is probably the dynamic that David felt while SNL and just in their stardom together in the mid 90s,
Well, they all talk about how they all agreed Chris was the funniest and Chris was the biggest star. It was just about how everybody reacted to that around him.
Right.
Some people were like, "Oh man, this is great." Like Sandler. Sandler was like, "Oh, this is great. This guy's the best, and I'm not even going to try to compete with him. Whatever." And then there was other people that resented him, and I don't think Spade resented him, but it was like,
this
guy's so talented.
Because Dave was like a writer at SNL, and David will tell really funny stories about how Chris cannot write at all, and people had to write for him, but Chris is just so naturally talented.
They just keep him in the writer's room and
fully committed. And they'd almost keep him around in the writer's room, like, okay, make us laugh. We're not expecting you to give us like all this good material, but
we'll
you're
make
fun
something
to write
happen
for.
out of it.
Exactly.
I think everybody has like a figure in their life, a friend in their life, or somebody in their family or whatever, who does just have like that type of contagious, beautiful energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, I think Randy is like that. You know, Randy's just always glowing. Even
Mm-hmm.
when Randy's down, he finds a way to glow. It's crazy, and that's a really beautiful quality. You know, and I think that quality is kind of handled in this movie in a weird way. Yeah, again, it like you said, it doesn't like spend a ton of time focused on his dad dying, but it does undercut the movie and it does ground the performance a little more.
Mm-hmm.
As this movie goes on, I mean, for the first half of like their sales trip, they're not selling anything. That's kind of like where a lot of the comedy is coming from in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Them going into situations where they think they might actually have this sale, but they don't.
Or one of
they,
them screws it up.
yeah,
Tommy, it does the whole showcase with the model cars and burns one in front of the guy when that one actually showed promise.
Yep.
Or when Richard, like, they go into this one where like this is an easy one. Like let me handle
we
it.
should be
Richard's
in and
like,
out.
yeah, and then Richard fails miserably, and then Tommy fails miserably by acting out.
Yep, freaking
And
out.
they're both like, it's like an unhealthy relationship between those two for a long period because they don't complement each other in the beginning.
No.
And but eventually Tommy realizes, like, well, Richard sees it in Tommy. They're like,
Yep.
you are like your dad. You're street smart and like you know how to talk to people and relate to
and
people.
read people and interact with people.
Mhm.
And you don't need books to do that.
And Richard's like, I can't do that.
Yep.
Like, I know the technical side of the business. You're the personable side.
Yep.
Like, there needs to be a balance between the two, which they eventually find.
Yeah. And once they do find that balance, which happens after they get into a physical altercation in which Richard knocks out Tommy with a huge plank of wood.
After Tommy's egging him on.
Egging him on, yeah.
Yeah.
That scene in the diner is one of my favorite scenes of that movie, actually. I love, that's what selling's about. These people aren't buying brake pads, or they're buying you.
Mhm.
You know, that scene is really good. Everything with Tommy and the bun.
The roll.
The roll is really
in front
good.
of Helen, the waitress.
The very put upon waitress she's really good in that scene.
She is really funny.
You actually would think that you just like picked her up off of a double shift. You're like, please be in this movie real quick, Helen.
She worked at the Cluck Bucket for sure.
The Cluck Bucket.
She was a
long time.
Canada native where they filmed.
But as the movie goes on, they definitely find their groove. They start selling, and what they use to sell is Tommy's personality and Tommy's humor.
Mm-hmm.
He's usually just going on these crazy little tangents that have nothing to do with sales in order to get the attention of the prospective sale, get them laughing, get them feeling a certain type of way, and then go for it. But undercut with this plot is also Rob Lowe and Bo Derek, who are in this movie. Rob Lowe, uncredited, and Bo Derek, who at this point, she was still a very big star. Bo Derek was a beautiful woman and probably still, I don't even know if she's still alive.
I think she is. Yeah.
But she was very well known and sought after, and she's in this movie being married to Tommy's dad.
Yep.
You very quickly find out that Rob Lowe, who is playing her daughter and the new adoptive son, her son, and the new adoptive son of Tom Sr., is actually married to her. She's 25 years older than him or something, but they're con artists, and they suckered Tommy's dad, and they're trying to take the company. So while our heroes are off on the road doing their thing, the movie will occasionally cut back to Rob Lowe, who you and I really like just as a person. As an actor.
He has great comedic timing. You see that not only in comedies like movies and like Tommy Boy or Wayne's World. He is fantastic in Parks and Rec.
He's great in Parks. That's my favorite Rob Lowe.
I would argue Rob Lowe had an era in the 80s where he was like, I'm a dramatic bad boy. When he's a comedy star,
he's really funny.
He really works, and he found his niche with that.
100%. I love his character on that show. But Rob Lowe's fun in this movie. He doesn't have a lot to do with Tommy, but the scenes with Chris and Rob are fun in the beginning, with the cow tipping and the gas station
washing Chris off.
See, in real life, those guys were good friends. All three of them, David, Rob, and Chris. And they kind of just asked Rob to be in the movie uncredited as like a favor, and he's like, oh, I love these guys, I'll come do it. And he plays a pretty underbaked but fun villain, you know?
They put him through a lot of like stupid gags. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like this guy's an idiot, or this guy is being like they just put him in awful situations where
He's not as smart as he thinks he is.
he's getting attacked by a dog, he's getting electrocuted, he's getting his shirt blown off, like
Yeah.
sucked off. Like it's crazy.
He gets hurt very badly at the end of the movie.
Yeah, before he goes to prison.
Before he goes to prison.
This was like, okay, they just used him for a lot of like physical humor.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
And it works. Yeah.
Well, Dylan and I marveled like when they introduce Rob's character, a bus is pulling into Ohio, and Rob steps out, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's Rob Lowe. I'm sure people are like, oh, Rob Lowe, he's gonna be a good guy in this movie. Like he's
cool.
Yeah, wow.
Rob Lowe is always cool.
And then Rob's drinking
chocolate milk,
a carton of milk, and this kid is like behind him in the bus window making fun of him and pointing at him, and Rob just like slams his fist and hits him,
punches him,
and
essentially.
Then he crumples his milk carton and throws it into a baby's stroller as
it passes.
Yeah,
That's
our introduction.
Yeah, the mom is like talking to her other kids so she doesn't see it, and he just throws it as like probably hits the baby, you know. So like right away you do know that he's just an awful person. It's really it's an effective way to introduce him.
It is,
you know. Again, Rob and Bo especially, you know, she doesn't have much to do here.
No,
but that's kind of fine.
I would argue. I mean, the two things she has to do is her funny introduction scene from the pool, and then at the end she just randomly ends up like with Dan Aykroyd's Zelensky character just like is like falls head over heels for her. Is like he basically is like, oh, you want to go to our club, get some stuff to eat?
Get a bite to
eat. He's charming her, and she's being charmed by him. But other than that, yeah, there's not much to that character.
There's also some things that the movie takes you through Callahan Auto, where there's a lot of cool workers, a lot of like funny little character actors that you're never gonna see in any other movie again, who pop up and they feel very real, they feel lived in, they feel like factory workers who all know each other and love each other. Mm-hmm. It's not worth like spending any time on, but I just want those little things kind of ground the movie. Everything at Callahan with Michelle, who we haven't talked about,
makes it feel very lived in.
Yeah,
and it does feel very small town.
Yeah,
like very small town America. Businesses where people have been working there for years and have a relationship with the owner's kids who come in, and like a lot of familiarity in that place and a lot of warm feelings in that place. And you get that it's when Tommy steps into the factory and is saying hi to everybody, and it might be a little overdone, but
they're all happy to see him.
I think that is
part of the continued theme. Everybody's always happy to see Tommy.
I'm sure whenever Chris went to his dad's old like asphalt company or something when he was older, it's like, oh, hey Chris, how you doing?
What's up, buddy?
Yeah, nice to see you. And so
they're just putting that in there.
That's one of my favorite sequences in the movie, honestly. It always makes me feel warm inside.
It's fun too, because you also just have the little gags of him hitting his head and doing his karate thing in the brake department. But yeah, I just want to touch on that because we skipped over Michelle Brock, played by
Julie Warner, who is the love interest in this movie. At this point, she was really known for Doc Holliday, her movie with Doc Hollywood.
Doc Holliday. Tombstone. In her movie with Michael J. Fox and her famous scene in that movie that became a big cultural thing. But she's good in this movie. She's sweet. Doesn't have a lot to do, but when she is asked to do stuff, like in her scene on the dinghy, screaming at the boys on the shore, she's effective, and the two of them have an awkward chemistry that feels kind of real.
Feels real.
It feels like, oh, they're awkwardly trying to court each other, but it's not working. Behind the scenes, Chris wouldn't even look her in the eye. That's how shy he was. She said in the documentary that came out a few years ago that she could only get him to look at her when they were filming. And that she would like ask him to her trailer and try to like, and she would just stare straight down, because she was just
kind of mirroring. It seems like, the beginning of their relationship in this movie.
Yeah.
Like Tommy, they went to high school together. I'm sure Tommy was really shy around her, and you kind of do feel that a little bit in the movie. I mean, Tommy projects some confidence while talking to her, but I don't think I either heard about that or remembered hearing that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
thinking about their relationship and how it's shown on screen.
But yeah, I just want to touch on her quick. She's good in this movie. I've only seen her in this movie and Doc Hollywood. But she's good in both of them.
Yeah, she's
She has a
she's
very
an,
like warm, loving presence, and
yes,
her connection with Tommy feels warm enough to make it work.
and she's a big. I mean,
She's big in the third
big.
act.
I was about to say she plays a big role in this movie and like the conspiracy and like
Yeah.
like opening up the Rob Lowe and Bo Derek relationship and
Yep.
getting all the information on them as she sees them in the airport making out, and eventually, yeah, she brings all that info to Tommy and Richard by the end, and
Yep.
she's a big reason why the movie ends how it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Her character is important, and she has a lot to do. And when she messes up the orders, when you find out it's Rob Lowe doing computer fraud or whatever, the disappointment, and for about 10 minutes, the movie wants you to think that like, oh man, that's it. They failed.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course everything works out, and you know the company is saved, and Tommy's a hero, and blah blah blah. But I also, you brought up Aykroyd before. I did want to touch on Zelensky. Dan Aykroyd, as one of the SNL original cast members, is in this movie as Ray Zelensky, who's like portrayed as like the auto part king of America, not just like a certain. He's everywhere. He's got commercials all over. He's got billboards all over. Even when they're watching TV, we're tuning back into the Zelensky Family Theater after this.
Mm-hmm.
So they even have like TV programs. So it's not just that
Yeah.
he's in auto parts; he's in media too.
Mhm.
Zelensky's huge. He's
really
like
powerful.
He's a powerful figure. And Aykroyd, his voice in this movie is great. His look in this movie with his hair is
Mhm.
great. Nathan and I were marveling at that.
One thing I want to say about Aykroyd is one, I think he continues to be one of the more underrated SNL alums and an underrated comedy star. I think he had a lot of terrific movies in the 80s and his little performances in, other movies like Tommy Boy. I mean, he's great in Tommy Boy.
He
And
is.
one thing that about Aykroyd that separates him from almost any other person in this world is his ability to deliver dialogue.
Yeah.
He delivers dialogue so fast and so succinctly, and if you don't feel like you're missing anything, you just like, how does guy rapid fire? Like he just works at a different register.
Yeah,
and
he's at a different pace.
he did, and it's almost like you're kind of like a genius. Like I don't know where that came from,
and it kind of suits the character too, right? Because like anyone that busy, time is the currency for them. You know?
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's get this conversation going quick. All right, Tommy, blah 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 blah. I've got a meeting in 10 minutes, then I have another meeting, and then I'm flying here, and then I have another meeting. So that's how all of them, when they're busy, blah, 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 blah. And he is great at that, like very rapid fire, very sardonic, smart,
yes,
self-confident, while also putting people down around him a little bit. It's very fun. Zelensky's a fun character who he's in the movie for maybe 5 minutes, but he's a really good presence throughout.
Makes a meal of his he's like the central character who he's like the big bad that we meet at the end who controls where the story goes in the last 5 minutes.
Yep. Which is funny. And those SNL movies where, a bunch of other SNL people cameo and pop up, and that was an era that you don't really see anymore, and I always love to see those original SNL guys pop up in little roles because like they would always eat. I know Chevy's in the news for different reasons at the moment, like Chevy Chase in Dirty Work. I don't. You haven't seen that full movie, have you?
I have seen it.
Yeah, but like just his little scene is.
It's good.
It's like seeing those comedy talents like put themselves in like movies that they probably felt were beneath them a little bit.
Doing favors
for Lorne,
either for Lorne or the new up and coming SNL folk, and that's really cool.
Well, I know Dan and Chris actually had a relationship, and Dan was always
bring this up,
trying to help Chris out and
mainly get
him sober.
I mean, not that this is a whole other podcast, but like Aykroyd and Belushi and their relationship, and Aykroyd constantly trying to help Belushi, and Aykroyd in interviews and in I think a documentary or two was like, I saw a lot of Belushi and Chris idolized Belushi and wanted to be him desperately, and Aykroyd was really trying to help Chris out and really trying to be there for him because his best friend passed away. Similar circumstances, unfortunately. Not to bring the pod down immediately.
No, but a lot.
It's important to think about his role just in like playing a part in a big movie like this for Chris and being there for Chris and this like a cameo favor. It's cool. It's really nice to see.
A lot of those older guys really loved Chris, other than Murray. I know Bill Murray despised pretty much everybody on the bad boys run.
Yeah.
But I know that like even Chevy was trying to help. Chevy gave Chris multiple conversations about his drug use, and if even Chevy Chase is telling you like, hey, you got to calm down on the coke. Chevy lived on coke.
Mm-hmm.
If Chevy is telling you that you're out of control, things are bad. You know, a lot of people tried to help Chris. Just he went to rehab 20 something times. Lauren sent him to rehab multiple times, fired him and rehired him multiple times, and then gave him his last shot to host SNL, which was really bad
and sloppy.
And
if you go back and watch that, it is sloppy, and it's hard to watch.
I told Nathan, I think last year I tried to watch it for the first time. I had to turn it off. It was just it's really gross to see people commodify talent like that and just like, well, let's just get him sober enough for this 1 hour, and then he can go kill himself after. And that was a lot of Chris's life towards the end. Like, let's just get him sober for this movie, and then he can go do whatever he wants. Chris went to rehab 20 something times. Everybody tried. I think he's one of those few situations where like I think everybody around him. Addicts will always talk about nobody was supporting me. I think he had a ton of support from family, friends, coworkers. It just didn't work out.
Yep.
But I do think talking about Aykroyd in that context is important because, like you said, the older guard, they saw a lot of their generation. They saw a lot of people go into that stuff and never make it out, like Belushi, and a lot has been made out of the Belushi Chris stuff. Some say it's very over thought about. Some say it's under. I don't know, but according to a lot of people, the only book Chris ever read other than the Bible was Wired by Bob Woodward. Chris, he had a very obsessive personality. And you can kind of see that in his comedy too. A lot of his characters on SNL are very like obsessively in the, it's just who he was, and for better or for worse, unfortunately it turned out for worse, but I think what Nathan and I really hold on to is just the fun stuff with him. Nathan and I are big fans of Almost Heroes, which is a objectively not very good
not great movie, but
Chris
is so good.
He's so fun in that. That's the thing. Maybe getting back to the Ebert thing, comedy is super subjective, but there's also something about intention that I think a lot of critics, at least back then, were saying, there was never any talk about what people were intending to do. And I think Tommy Boy, again, it's the best movie he made, unfortunately.
Easily his best.
But it does make me, it makes me sad to know that like Chris never got to understand how beloved this movie was.
Right.
He just, it opened at #1 and that's cool. I'll get a paycheck and that's cool. This became a cult classic. It is a cult classic. It's a top 5 selling DVD of all time, which is crazy. It's one of the most bought physical of all time.
Whenever Spade or Rob Lowe or like whenever they talk about Chris, they usually say like what's the movie that gets brought up the most? And Rob's had a huge career, like spanning decades, and he's like Tommy Boy. Yeah. And Spade's the same way, Tommy Boy. Yeah. And Spade has done a lot since 1995 too.
Yeah,
so much work, a lot of pretty good work, and it just speaks to this movie's continuing cultural relevance and how it just makes people happy. I think this movie. This is like an ultimate comfort movie.
For sure.
Like Dylan said, you've probably seen this over 100 times. At 25, I've probably seen this 50 times.
Yep.
It's baked into us, and like I said, it's part of how we talk, how we speak to each other.
We're always doing accents from this movie.
Right,
like even if we're not doing lines,
these little like vocal stem,
these vocal stems,
the vocal stems.
Yep,
that is a big part of our communication.
Yep,
and just our reverential stuff about movies or TV or whatever. But this movie is just the ultimate comfort. It really is. Yeah. And yes, there are flaws.
Oh yeah, it's not a perfect.
It's not a perfect movie.
I like this movie more than most, and it's not perfect.
Right.
I love it.
And so I think this movie. I know it's like really popular and people love this movie. It really is a testament to how comedy is subjective. A movie like this, like I think comedies in general, you know, you can rewatch them over and over and over and laugh at the same beats, edits, you know, needle drops, whatever performances. But you always find something new to enjoy each time you watch them. And
Yep.
like I was sitting here with Dylan as we were watching it and going like, I've never noticed that before, like the tiniest little detail.
Yep.
And I feel like I've studied this movie. Like I think I know
Yeah.
every little thing. And
Which again is crazy that they have all these little things that we're still noticing in the background because this was just run and gun. Again, like we touched on, they had like 40 pages of a script and like, all right, fly to Canada, figure it out. And people watching might not even, if anybody is, but like that's not how movies are made. That's not how good movies are made, nor movies that turn a profit and become like a cultural touchstone, you know? This movie is like it's like a flash in the pan that shouldn't have worked.
You know, and fortunate for them, you know, Peter Siegel he's not a great director, but he's had some good work after Tommy Boy, and he does good work here. David Newman with the score does really fun work.
It's shot pretty
very
well.
memorable. Yeah, Victor J. Kemper shot this, who had an awesome career in comedy, and he just knew how to use the camera. Very competent cinematographer. They had a lot of good help.
Yeah.
Behind the movie, and we were talking about this after the movie. You know, you couldn't nowadays just give a movie to any SNL member and go like, "This movie is built on you.
For you.
Here's $20 million. Go make a movie. It's gonna make 100 whatever.
50,
yeah, and we're gonna turn a profit." Now, back in the '90s, that would have worked because I think, like you mentioned at the very beginning of this pod, SNL was a central part of culture, and it still has its place in culture today.
It's different though.
It's just way different,
way less,
and no one watches it live. I'm sure people do, but a lot of it is just through YouTube or social outbreaks. And like in the 90s or 80s and early 2000s,
appointment TV,
and
or else
like
you missed it.
The biggest, I mean, SNL is meant to be the biggest collection of comedy stars in the country. And not to say that there aren't great talented people on current SNL, because I still do keep up.
A couple of them are really funny,
but
I really like the new young lady they hired, Veronica.
Yes, I can't pronounce her last name
or something like that. I've been following her on Instagram for a long time, and some other guy, he was on that like Whose Line Is It Anyway YouTube type of show that I've talked to you about.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Sam Reich just gives them like random characters and like people come out. It's a really fun show. Game changers.
They are doing a good job hiring.
They're getting more like
unique
internet
talent.
people.
Yeah, unique talent that people really respond to. But in
like Cam Patterson, he's huge.
He
I
is huge.
I don't respond to him very much, but people love Cam, and he's Kill Tony superstar.
This is a great point. Like, you couldn't just give a $20 million comedy vehicle to Cam Patterson.
No, it would not
be
do well.
Like you said, these movies are directed Netflix movies, direct to streaming, and there's no problem with that. But
that's just how it is now.
Like, that's why the death of the comedy is where it is right now. Like the death of the theater comedy, you know. And this movie was at like the pinnacle of that, the peak, and it kind of tailed off during like the Apatow, Rogan, Farrell, that whole world. And unfortunately, all comedy is on streaming. Not many are in theaters.
I think that's what the internet, again, is. You know, I always sound like an old man with this, but like, there's a lot of great things, but when everything is instantly accessible, everything loses meaning. Everything. Live TV means nothing now. You know, like SNL. If you missed SNL in 2001, you just missed it.
Wait for a summer rerun.
You missed Will Ferrell being Bush last night. That sucked. You shouldn't have missed that. Now you just, I'm never gonna watch that live. Like you said, just I'll wake up in the morning, I'll doom scroll until I find it, and there he is. And that type of like commodification of content is it's not good for people. It's not good for comedy. It doesn't like lead to anything truly like brave or like unique, because they're all trying to get like that quick joke in a 5 to 10 second little clip, or else they're gonna scroll. So they're not looking for like intelligent jokes. They're looking for quick ones. You know, very quick visual gags that have nothing to do with it. Again, SNL is still very important, and there have been a couple of shows in the last few years that have been awesome. And I know that you and I really loved the 50th anniversary special.
Yes, I loved it.
And there was some Chris in there too, and I know Sandler clearly has the Chris Farley song that has become a big thing in the last few years. And that's all in the SNL world. That there's so much influence in American pop culture because of Lorne Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
You love him or hate him or not, whoever people think about Lorne, he changed American comedy and American media forever.
American streamlined comedy, prime time.
Mm-hmm.
It is crazy to think
It
about.
was never a thing before.
And I think comedy is a little worse for Lorne and the powers that be. I don't know. That's probably not Lorne's choice. It might just be the studio's choice. Like these comedies, like Dylan and I were talking about, the last big ones, Lonely Island and the Lonely Island films and MacGruber.
And they stopped because
And
MacGruber lost a ton of money.
They lost money, and they slowly realized that audiences are not going to the theater to watch these movies, unfortunately.
That's why you see like even Sandler's Netflix comedies, they all go straight to Netflix.
And they all do super well
on Netflix.
But
they'll never be in theaters,
We're losing that, and I hope it'll probably curve again. I hope it does. I hope it comes back. We need it to come back. And I think a movie like this, where you just slap two big names on it
and tell them to have some fun.
Tell them to have fun, and not saying
get
that
competent people.
I was just gonna say,
it
isn't. It's one thing to just use two big names because we've seen plenty of bad movies.
Well, that doesn't work for sure.
Oh, these are big. They're big names, but is there any meaning or intentionality behind anything?
Any chemistry?
Is it well directed? Is it well shot? Well edited?
Yeah.
Like, is there a good script? And not to say that Tommy Boy has all those elements down pat, but it's really good. Of course, like we've been saying ad nauseum, comedy is subjective, but I think this movie is, for the most part, very accessible. Hasn't aged badly in many places or at all.
No.
It's evergreen comedy that feels very lived in and relatable, and I don't know it.
Especially if you're a Midwest kid, this is
that's
a
what I was just gonna say.
very Midwest coded thing. It's all shot in Canada, but Nathan and I were remarking. This is gonna be really really niche, but like it feels like it was filmed in Walworth County. Right now. It looks Midwest. It looks like Wisconsin, and there's a lot of parts of this where they're driving down the road and it's like Chippewa Falls or Eau Claire or Oshkosh,
Milwaukee, whatever.
A lot of this is in Wisconsin, which is kind of cool too. Again, just putting like Chris's actual life onto film and just changing the name, really. At the end of the day, this movie has been seen by a lot of people. It is a touchstone culturally. It's one of the biggest physical media releases ever put out. And Chris has his name on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Chris Farley still lives on in his own way. They're making a biopic about him with Paul Walter Hauser, who I'm a big fan of as an actor. And with Josh Gad directing, in a weird way, it never stops. It's like the line in Sandlot.
Heroes get remembered, legends
never die, man.
Yep.
And he had a very short legendary run, but he is a legend, and the way that people talk about him or revere him, and like Jonah Hill. Jonah Hill's favorite comedian is Chris Farley. Paul Walter Hauser.
A lot of people's favorite comedian is Chris.
Justin Long talks about Chris. People who he never met were like, "Oh, I grew up on this guy," and which is cool to see because I think like if you grow up in the Midwest, you're like, "Oh, nobody knows about him other than us." He's a Madison boy.
He's like a supernova star.
He's a Madison boy.
Literally everyone.
It's like everybody grew up on.
Does.
Olivia Wilde has her story that she tells about meeting Chris, and Chris just like making her feel like a superstar, and she was like kind of a chunkier kid, and he could see her feeling self-conscious, and he just like tapped her and just started shoving his face and winking at her. Jim Carrey tells a story about how he was at a birthday party of Carrey's, and just all these kids are following him around. He's playing with all the kids and throwing them into the pool, and Carrey called him. He's like the Pied Piper of children. They just wanted to hang out with Chris and get to know him. And I think that's what I take away from Chris. The addiction and some of the awful things he did when he was Chris did he was pretty mean to people when he was on heroin and cocaine. and boozing the way he was, and he hung out with bad people, and he spent his time with prostitutes and drug addicts and gangsters even.
People that took advantage of him.
Yep. He was dating a member of the mob at one point. Chris was just a kid who got himself a little over his head and unfortunately was never able to get out. But what I remember most is just the sweetness, and the way that people talk about him lets you know that behind closed doors, what Chris really was just a really kind kid who just wanted everybody to feel loved and wanted everybody to feel happy and having a good time. And he just wasn't able to do that for himself, unfortunately. It is sad, but at the end of the day, we have all these really cool performances. And again, go back through, I know a lot of people have seen Tommy Boy, but go through some of his SNL stuff. I know people have seen Matt Foley, but there are some gold. And there's still sketches that Nathan and I will send each other on Instagram, what the heck, have you ever seen this? You're no way, dude. I think some of his best work has still been unseen by us on SNL. I got to watch everything. But at the end of the day, we love Chris. Clearly, you can tell. We love Tommy Boy. There's only so much we can talk about it without going and repeating ourselves.
It's really hard to pod about comedies.
Yeah, it is.
To just say, oh, this was funny. Wasn't this funny? That was a funny moment, wasn't it? And or just regurgitating.
We're doing the Chris Farley show.
Yeah. Wasn't that great?
Should you remember that time when Chris did that?
remember the 37th time when we watched this movie together?
I know.
It's but that's why we wanted to turn this into more of a appreciation of Chris and tie it to his best movie that he ever made.
Yep.
But I honestly, I hope I speak for you too. I don't want this to be the last Chris movie we ever do, but this was his most important and his most evergreen and the most seen, obviously.
The best made.
Now we have our, like you mentioned earlier, we have our pet favorites, like Almost Heroes. That's a big one for us. And
we will be doing that
Black
movie.
Sheep and Beverly Hills Ninja in their own ways.
Yep. Oh,
Black Sheep is really good.
I have a bunch of fun with all of them.
Yeah.
They're not good. Beverly Hills Ninja is a bad movie.
It's a bad movie.
And it breaks my heart to know Chris took that one really hard.
But it's funny. It's funny.
It's fun. And you know what? Kids love that movie. I loved that movie as a kid.
Because Chris is a great physical comedian. Yep. And he committed 110% to every single thing and project that he did.
And again, I think, kids are just, they're a little more spiritually sensitive and they just, I remember being 5 years old the first time I saw Tommy Boy because 2 weeks after that, he died. And I remember Mom, she was talking to it was right around Christmas. He died on, I think, December 17th. And I heard Mom yeah, I got Dylan a Sega Genesis. I'm oh, cool. As a 5-year-old, I'm getting a Sega. Because I remember all the other kids, whatever. And then I literally a day after he died, I'm when is the guy from Tommy Boy gonna make his next movie? And I one of my first memories is Mom, oh, he died. He did a bunch of drugs and alcohol and he died a few days ago. He's gone. And I wasn't sad as a kid, but I remember that moment. That was my first inkling of what death was Chris Farley.
Usually that is.
I was too young to remember. Yeah. Grandma Stevens' husband Denny dying.
Usually is someone a little bit more outsized.
Yeah.
Now for me it was a family member, but it's different for everybody. Right? It's different for everybody. Yes, it's different for everybody. It really is.
Ronnie was the first family member that
Our uncle, our
uncle Ronnie. Yeah. But it's just weird. I remember that as a 5-year-old, whoa. And I remember as a 5-year-old, just because Mom said heroin, cocaine, alcohol. I'm oh, I'm never doing that stuff. As a 5-year-old, it killed Tommy Boy. As a kid, you make those type of connections. And, I've met a couple members of the Farley family at this point, and you still see how this has impacted every aspect of their life and how they talk about him and how they don't talk about him. This is the type of stuff that breaks families apart, and every family's got their issues. Our family and our multiple family branches, everybody's got, everybody has issues. It's just, you hope that these issues don't lead to that kind of stuff. But this is the end of the episode. I also just want to, what I also want people to remember about Chris is he was a devout man. He was a party animal. He was an addict, but he would wake up and he was at every single mass at Marquette. The real father, Matt Foley, who just passed away too, actually. No, was it Matt Foley who passed away, or was it?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think Foley passed away, unfortunately. But like everybody says, it wasn't just like, yes, he had these, but he loved God and he loved serving people. He served his community. When he lived in New York, he served the homeless. He went to all these churches and made programs and gave people and helped feed people and donated and never wanted any credit for that. Never wanted anybody in the media to know he was doing that. And I think that's important to notice too. It's
He had a really big heart.
really big heart, just wasn't able to have that big heart for himself. Was never able to love himself the way he loved other people and
Right.
the way he accepted love. But not to end it on a downer, Tommy Boy is a great movie. It's a fun movie if you haven't seen it. Chris, whether you love him or you don't, you can't deny that he wasn't funny and he wasn't
Exactly.
a superstar. And here on the Uncool show, a lot of our sensibilities are because of that, not just that man, but that era.
Chris is a big part of why I am who I am. But in terms of looking at media and
Yep.
looking at people, just in general, like he is a big part of what I think is funny. and just someone really important to us.
Yep.
He always has been. He always will be.
Yep. And I'm nervous about the biopic, but it'll be fun to see.
Something we might have to pot about.
Oh, that will
dissect.
be potted about.
Yep.
But everybody, thank you again. Thank you again for almost 1,000 subscribers. Maybe we have 1,000 now. Who knows? But thank you guys for watching and for the words of encouragement and everything like that. We're also, looking for ideas, looking for collaborators. If people want to come on, we're gonna get little Randy on, but more the merrier. I got more mics, I got more room. So love you guys. Have a good one.